Thank you so much for coming back. It's me, Jill. I am here reading Free Will, my memoir, one chapter at a time. If you're new here, please check out the links below so you can get caught up. You can go back even before chapter 1 and read the preface or listen to the preface and get caught up with us and finish the story with us. Uh, uh, if for those of you that have been here and keep coming back, thank you, thank you. Thank you as always. I really appreciate it. Please share, subscribe, hit that like button, and leave me a comment below. I really appreciate it. Okay, so when we left off, the last couple chapters were kind of rough and rocky. And so my husband and I were separated, and then I had started a relationship with somebody else. And so that's where we're picking up on chapter 31. And we'll do chapter 31, and then 32 is really short. So I think we'll just do those two today. Okay? All right. One night, something happened that shifted my attention away from Dwayne and my separation and marriage problems. Well, kind of. It was a busy Saturday evening. I rushed to help the kids get ready to go ice skating with their friends. Irvine Spectrum opened a skating rink during the winter season, and my kids were invited by a bunch of their JW friends to go skating. One of the families going happened to be some of our closest friends in the church. This was a kind, generous family with whom we had traveled to Hawaii on a few occasions, to Palm Springs regularly. We spent many of our weekends hanging out at their house or ours, along with many other friends. They had 2 boys, one the same age as my daughter and one a year younger. The younger of the 2 and my daughter were best buddies. We would all speculate that one day they would marry, joking which of the families would pay for the wedding. So I was happy and relieved that the kids got to go off and spend the evening to have fun with the other kids they knew and loved. I would be spending the evening on my own. I was adjusting to the brand new separation. I had no aspirations of this marriage work. I really thought we were ready for divorce. Obviously, I was playing with fire by getting involved with Dwayne. I was ready to burn this marriage down. The church prohibits divorce, but the events of the last year had brought me to a place that I didn't care about the consequences. Our discussions of splitting up had been ongoing for 2 or 3 years at this point. Up until this point, my husband had railed relentlessly against splitting up for good. So the separation was a compromise. He had moved into a hotel suite in the Dana Point Harbor just days earlier. I had told a couple of my friends that we were separating for a while. One in particular had been through some tough marriage difficulties herself. I poured my heart out to her about what was happening. She encouraged me to talk to the elders about it. I was not willing to do so. This conversation did not stay with her. I felt no closeness or comfort from the elders in the JW congregation. I had in the past trusted and felt closeness to some of the elders I had known in my life. When I was a child, these men were like family to me. But after my dad had been disfellowshipped, they became men who looked different to me. They were there to judge. Literally, when someone in the congregation committed a wrongdoing or sin, they formed what they called a judicial committee. This committee would pass judgment on the wrongdoer. So to me, they no longer appeared as loving, mature men who, as they claimed, shepherded the flock, but instead seemed like intimidating watchdogs looking for anyone causing trouble. So after 46 years in the church, I had grown uneasy with the elder arrangement in the organization. The elders for me were neither friends nor confidants. They were definitely not trained marriage counselors. Had we gone to ask for assistance, their only goal would have been to get us to stay together with the guidelines of the scriptures. The scriptures would tell us that the man is head of the household and the wife should be in submission to him. Never mind the nuances that had transpired over the years. In truth, for most of 20 plus years, I was happy to submit to what I thought God's arrangement of marriage should be. I loved pleasing my husband, and I had no qualms allowing him to be the head of the household. Submission to your husband as a Christian wife is easy peasy when nobody makes a big deal out of it. For most of our marriage, my husband didn't act like he was the boss or use his lofty position to get his way overtly. I know not all husbands who believe in biblical headship are as kind and unassuming about it as he was. I knew many miserable wives that had harsh, demanding head of households that wielded their power with vehemence. But my husband, for the most part, had made it easy. It just never came up. Things had changed, though. We now disagreed on so much. Our relationship had gotten to the point that I had lost my desire to please my husband. I was no longer afraid to have strong opinions. I knew going to the elders for help would just have got us both in trouble. Years earlier, when problems between us had escalated, I had asked him if we should consider talking to the elders about our difficulties. He was not willing to do so. It would be humbling or even humiliating for a lot of people to do this. Admitting you can't seem to solve your own problems doesn't come easy to a lot of people. And telling your personal business to folks that are in a position to judge you is scary, not to mention invasive and creepy. So we had chosen to separate and see if it would help. Maybe it would give perspective. Maybe it would draw up appreciation for gratitude in us. I truthfully didn't even hope for this at that point. I was done trying. I'd been too hurt, scorched from the burns of bygone fights that had left scars. So in my heart, I was already long gone. But my husband convinced me that it would be best to start with just separating. With what was brewing with Dwayne, I just saw this as my ticket out. So now, in the first few days of this separation, of the kids' dad moving out and adjusting to this new, very unsettling situation, we were just trying to live life. In the midst of helping the kids get warm sweaters and socks for their night of ice skating, I received a phone call. It was from a lady, a mom of some kids that were going skating too. I knew her a little, but not well. She attended a neighboring JW congregation. She was more like a friend of a friend. She was to be the driver that was transporting all the kids to the skating rink that night. She spoke awkwardly to tell me that my kids couldn't go with them. She said that Jim, the dad of my daughter's best friend, who, by the way, had just recently been appointed an elder in the church, said that if my kids were going, then he didn't want his kids to be there. He said that because my husband and I were separated, that made us all bad association, and he couldn't have his kids associate with ours. My mouth hung open in shock. What? He knows us, is close with our family. He supposedly cares about our family. However, he only knew we were separating from my girlfriend who I'd confided in. She had told her husband, who apparently immediately told him. He recklessly took a stand against our decision to separate, not knowing any details, and with a broad stroke painted our whole family as bad and not worthy of associating with. After hearing of our marital trouble, There was no phone call to my husband or myself to see if everything was okay. No offer of, is there anything we can do? Just lop you all off as crap and tell other people you are crap. I was gobsmacked. I really thought he was kinder than that. I couldn't believe his new position of authority would bring on this heartless judgment. Every doubt I'd ever had about the truth and validity about this religious organization flashed to the forefront of my mind. The gossip, the hypocrisy, the judgment, as well as so many other heinous attributes of the religion. I was not sweeping this under the carpet. I had seen more than my share of hypocrisy, self-righteousness, and haughtiness within the elder arrangement and the JW organization over the decades, so I shouldn't have been so surprised. But this felt like a slap in the face. It was disgraceful and hurtful, especially for my kids. After all, this had nothing to do with them. They had done nothing wrong. I told the kids that they couldn't go ice skating that night, but not why. They were pretty disappointed and they wanted answers. They eventually got wind of it through their friends via text. They were so confused and hurt. They saw me wipe tears from my face as I excused myself from being in the room with them. I needed to cry. What had I done? I had caused this to happen. No, wait, this is freaking wrong. This is bullshit. I stopped feeling the sting of the rejection of my children and focused on my anger. Man, I was pissed. As much as I struggled with breaking up my marriage, it was my worry about my stand in the church that largely held me back. Now it was beginning to be clear why. In my righteous indignation, I chose to call my mom and tell her of this betrayal. I told her what happened. In faith, my mom had been my mentor. Her example as a faithful Christian had always been inspiration and motivation for me to stay faithful. Inspiration because she was a loving, kind-hearted, thoughtful person with a heart of gold. So to watch her live her life in unselfish pursuit of teaching others what she held to be the true path to happiness made me want to be like her. Motivation because I didn't want to let her down. She held these truths as the only source of happiness, the only way to gain God's approval. She had instilled these beliefs in me since the day I was born and never stopped believing them herself. I had to stick with it, if not for my own soul, for my mom not to be hurt and disappointed. But that night was my breaking point. I had seen too much. I was tired of pretending that I thought this religion was the true religion. As I have explained, Jehovah's Witnesses teach that as God's only true organization on earth, the congregation has to be kept clean, meaning that any unrepentant sinners doing anything they deem unscriptural have to be removed from the congregation, i.e., disfellowshipped, kicked out, shunned. So how the hell do they have these imperfect men, elders in charge of judging everybody who themselves act unchristian in many ways? This heartless act of this elder, shutting out not just my husband and I, but also my innocent children, and then spreading the word like cheap gossip, was not the first time an elder had disappointed me. Throughout my life, I was taught these men were appointed by God, that they were here to direct us and shepherd us with loving guidance. And throughout my life, I had seen them act as hypocrites, casuists, and downright bullies. Yes, a good many of them were truly kind and had the good of the congregation as their priority. I don't deny that. Yet on multiple occasions throughout the decades in this church, elders, the leaders of this organization, were the impetus of my placing doubt on the validity of the dogma of this organization, too many to enumerate. So this incident with Jim was just the final nail in the coffin, the straw that broke the camel's back. I had it. On the heels of separating from my husband, I was in a momentum of truth, a locomotive that couldn't be stopped. I had just told my husband that I couldn't be married to him anymore, and now I was about to break up with my religion. As I recounted what transpired that evening to my mom, she was justifiably angry as well. The behavior of this elder was inappropriate and not exactly or even remotely the recommended procedure for this kind of situation within the church. But as we discussed it, I told her she knew good and well this wasn't the first time we saw really crappy behavior by these so-called mature men. These were the vanguard for the organization. These, they claimed, God had chosen to lead his clean congregation. I told her I was done with the organization, that I would never go to another meeting at a Kingdom Hall again. I honestly don't know if she heard me because she was really angry about what Jim had done. I wonder if she was just remembering how many times she'd witnessed inappropriate behavior from these holy men, having married elders hit on her as a young single mom, having them verbally humiliating her for eventually marrying a worldly man, witnessing them numerous times be cruel, harsh, and insensitive. In the following weeks, some of my friends called me. I thought maybe to console me and just be there for me. Instead, I was met with more judgment. Two of my closest friends bluntly told me that what I was doing, separating from my husband, was wrong in the eyes of God. They too advised me to go to the congregation elders to discuss my marriage. This really hurt. This is not what friends do when you're going through a hard time. I found out quickly that these friends had talked to others about our separation. It became a topic of gossip. The gossip was so prevalent that my children were hearing about it from their friends. There was no comforting or offering of help or concern or consoling. It was cold, malicious, slander, flowing freely in this clean, godly organization. Very shortly after all of this, I told my children I was not going to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore, and if they didn't want to, they didn't have to either. So I think, the next chapter is really, really short, so I'm going to go ahead and read the next couple pages here. In a strange way, all that bullshit that went down kind of drew my husband and I back together to a degree. We would end up talking about all the things that pissed us off about the organization. We would commiserate about everything, and it opened a door for us to communicate a lot on something which we shared a common ground. That also opened up the opportunity for him to begin working relentlessly at talking me into trying once again to make things work between us. In short amount of time that we had been separated, I had begun to see Dwayne, quit the church, and had begun to see life very differently. I bluntly told my husband that I didn't think he would like the new me. I told him that I knew I had changed. I was no longer the docile pushover that just went along with everything. I had strong opinions and feelings. That I would not be told my feelings were wrong. In short amount of time, I had grown huge cojones. My confidence was at an all-time high, and I wasn't going to stop there. At the same time, I began to recognize that things with Dwayne were not what I thought. We saw less and less of each other and eventually ended it. I cared for him deeply, and though we had this powerful connection, we were two very different people living very different lives. The physical chemistry, the magical spell between us was undeniably special and intensely powerful, but our differences were stark and distinct. so it tapered off rather quickly and very amicably. It was not uncomplicated, but again, I was eventually being drawn back in as if by a magnetic force to the idea of staying in my marriage. It was hard to resist my husband's unabating pursuit to try to get me to give our marriage another try. He was the father of my children and my best friend for 25 years. It was so hard to resist giving it one more chance. He even said, "Just give it 6 months. If you're not happy, I'll walk away." He joked and cajoled to soften my stance. In time, I gave in. I told my husband I would try. He moved back home. We gave it 6 more months. We gave it more than 6 months. At first, it was going really well. The separation had actually really helped. We appreciated each other and were more thoughtful and careful with each other. We spoke truthfully and honestly, more so than ever before. He spent more time at home with the kids and with me. He helped out around the house. At first, it felt like a real revival. But weeks turned into months, and slowly, all of the dust that had been settled began to stir back up again. Okay, so chapter before that, that's when I finally was done being a witness. I knew when I told my mom, I'm not doing this anymore. I knew it was point of no return. Like, there were just too many things over my lifetime stacked where I couldn't realistically force myself to stay in it, when it's not that I didn't still think it was the truth by any means, but I just saw so much hypocrisy, and it just made me sick, and I just didn't want to be a part of it anymore, even if it was true. So I won't say too much. It's really hard for me to not start getting into the areas that are in the next coming chapters and stuff. So I won't keep going, but thank you for coming on the ride with me, and hopefully you got into my righteously indignant, being pissed off from people gossiping and just being so rude and judgmental. And that's something I have to say. Being raised in the organization, the idea, the definition of a friend is a different thing. I mean, I cannot believe how close I was to so many people, and how when they thought I had the worldly cooties doing anything questionable, of course they didn't know I was having, a relationship outside of my marriage. They didn't know anything I was doing wrong. All they knew is that we were separating. And they just got the sense that anything like that was going on with us. And they all, got on their phones and started talking to each other, gossiping. I mean, when you're out for a long time, I mean, when I was out, I was out. I didn't see many witnesses. It's very, very rare. I have like really outlying like families and family members, like distant family members and stuff. So I'll hear little things, and I know the gossip that went down. I heard it. And there was things that were said that weren't true. There were things and everybody just decided to just leave us alone. And just, it was disgusting, and very, very much a perfect example of how not to be a friend, because a friend is with you in your toughest time, in my opinion. A friend is with you in your darkest hour. They show up and hold your hand or bolster you up or console you or whatever, give you a hug. But I didn't get any of that. And it's not that I don't think those people that were my friends have that capacity. I think they do, but it's just like anyone that's in it. My mom's the same way. She's I know she loves me and she's a kind, sweet person and seems like a wonderful friend to a lot of people and everything. But the rules come first. The rules come first. You got to do what the governing body says you got to do because they say the end's coming. So, being a real friend is not, it's not always an option. So, anyway, again, these are some heavy chapters. Okay, I'm so ready to go like do something fun now. So thank you so much for being here for even the heavy chapters. I really appreciate the support, and I hope to see you very soon. Peace.